It's a pleasure to be with everyone tonight, either watching live or watching this on a recorded afterwards. So I really just want to set the stage for some of the technical type and producer discussions as we go through this today. So some Ontario context. I want to hit on not just the fact that this is an Ontario thing. You'll certainly hear from Dr. Dan Schaefer that this is certainly proceeding similarly in the US and other jurisdictions. We're certainly seeing that in Ontario. The pace of change that this is happening, I'll show you a slide in a second that, this is happening quite quickly. It's unusual for the industries to be shifting this quickly, but there's some reasons why that's happening. Yeah, and we're certainly going to see some challenges and opportunities. I think Brent alluded to those in some of his introductory remarks even. So I'll hit on a couple of challenges, a couple of opportunities, and yeah, then the rest of the evening will be underway. So basically, why is there more beef on dairy from a dairy farm perspective? A lot of this, as Brent mentioned, is the use of sex semen. Some farms have coupled that with genomic testing as well, but really they're just getting enough replacement heifers from only breeding to their top cows. So what does top cows mean? It means different things to different farms, but ultimately using sex semen, it's no longer a 50-50 chance of getting a heifer calf or a bull calf. You pretty much get a heifer calf. So the question was asked, obviously, what do we do with breeding to these other ones that we don't need replacement heifers from? So the answer for that is beef sires. It's a pretty consistent answer here in Ontario. It's a pretty consistent answer in other jurisdictions. You'll hear those similar things as we go through the evening, I think. There's some other motivating things I think that contribute to this as well. I think there's a little more interest in managing heifers to a slightly tighter inventory than we've seen historically. Some of those reasons probably include slower quota growth that we're, in that phase right now. Feed costs, that's pretty self-explanatory. And there's money savings to be had. So if you don't need to raise a dozen or a couple of dozen extra heifers to 24 months, depending on your cost of heifer raising, it's probably 2,500 or 3,000 per animal over 2 years. So the savings add up by not having to keep that inventory as big as it used to be probably. I think dairy farmers want to be sure there's a market when they're selling young calves. We've seen this to be an issue in some other jurisdictions, and not to say it might not happen in this jurisdiction as well, but it's something that, I think producers want to be aware of. They want to be able to make sure there's a market when selling young calves. And like anything, when there's a premium for beef on dairy relative to just dairy calves, I think people respond to those market signals as well. So those are some of the reasons I think why we're seeing more beef on dairy. So this change is happening fast. I think this slide is pretty self-explanatory. It was from Lactanet. Brian Van Dormel published an article on this thing in 2019. So if you're following the red line, it's really the sire type used for Holstein inseminations. So this number on the x-axis runs from the year 2000 to 2019. So a couple of years ago. The red line trucks along, pretty well. 98, 96% Holstein to Holstein breeding. Then we hit 2014 and, it starts to change a little bit. And we also see that blue line. So the blue line is percent of, other sires or beef sires. So the other sires, it's never really changed. That dashed black line at the bottom is running, maybe 1%. The blue line though, 2015, 2016, it starts to go up. This data caps out 2019. So really, 2 and a bit years ago, and it's 11, maybe 12% probably by the end of that year. Our estimate right now is that we're running this pretty good, it would be 25%. So plus or minus. So again, it's probably more than doubled in 2+ years, and probably similarly to what you'll see from some of Dr. Schaefer's numbers as well. Talking to a colleague from Holstein Association in the United States by email a week or so ago, his best guess was that they're running at 30%. So I think you'll see how fast this is happening. So it's happening in many jurisdictions, certainly in Canada and the US. So what does that really mean in terms of a potential? So in terms of this, so I've got some Ontario, Quebec, and Canadian numbers here. And these are just data from Ag Canada. Really just looking at dairy cow numbers. So, you see Quebec is the biggest province, 360,000 dairy cows. Ontario, a little smaller at 318. If we're in this range of breeding 30% to beef, which I think is realistic for, by the time this year is over, we're in that 100,000 kind of cow from 2 provinces and just under 3 from Canada wide. You can play with those numbers a little bit. What's the potential overall? Where could this go? It could certainly go higher than 30%. It'll kind of depend where this market goes and how aggressive guys want to be on the dairy side. So I said I'd be quick. Challenges and opportunities. I've got 2 challenges and 2 opportunities. Calf variability between and from dairy farms. This is absolutely something that we're going to see. There's over 3,000 dairy farms. There's different management styles. There's different early calf and health factors, different advice they're getting on sire selection as well. So that creates some variability. Where were we a few years ago? Where will we need to be in a couple more years to improve this consistency? Questions to be asked. Communication between different sectors. Dairy sector, beef sector, there's some different languages between those sectors. And we also have that important sector of the nursery raising in Ontario. So where does that expertise leave us in terms of those nursery fed calves? How is that going to play out in the years to come? On the opportunity side, the dairy's got a year-round supply of calves, and dairy's got very good traceability. So how can we leverage that traceability into a marketable perspective as well? So there you have it. That's 5 minutes of context for Ontario, and I'll turn it back to Christoph. I think the rest of the program, keep those sort of thoughts in mind as we go through some of these discussions.